All right, Spanky McGee.
That's the one.
Here we go.
All right, you guys go ahead. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. All right. You know, Shaun, out of all three of us here, Andy, I think Shaun, a.k.a. Spanky McGee, has the coolest studio out of any of us. I mean, I've got a pretty nice background here, but it's all BS. Shaun, is that your living room?
No, this is my little this is the computer I'm using right now is actually the one I write all the music on. So
Okay.
this is just like a little couch for when the girls come up and listen, my wife and my daughter, and then I've
Yeah.
got a little drum kit, a little electronic drum kit over here, and then she vibed it out with these little lamps. So you can see the camera angle's a bit off right now, but she put these in there to make it look not so, just really sad up here. So,
yeah, give it a little bit of vibe. I hear you.
Yeah,
no, lava lights are awesome.
It's all the I love them, man, but it's all the misses. Because you see, there's two old ones there. The bulbs went out. That one there and that one there. So she said, no, that's not good enough. She replaced them for me. So she's made sure that I look super cool on on these Zoom things.
That's awesome. So Shaun, welcome. We've got Andy over here with Two Dudes Reviews. I'm Jay.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good. Shaun, our paths have crossed many times over the years, going way back to that showcase you guys did on Sunset Strip at the Whiskey or the Roxy or whatever that place was. And I was hanging out with a guy named Bill McGathy, who's not to get too inside baseball here, but I'm like, Bill, you have to manage these guys. You got to try and sign them. You got to do something. They're going to be the best thing since sliced bread. And, and he snoozed and somebody else gobbled you up and you've had a killer career. Congrats on the new album with a name I can't really pronounce. I'm going to try and rock this. Okay. Si vis pacem parabellum. Yes.
It's si vis pacem parabellum. Yeah. Other than that, you got it.
Si vis. Okay.
Yeah. I guess in this particular phrase, the W is voiced out as a, I'm sorry, the V is pronounced with a W. But other than that, you nailed it, man.
Well, tell me about the what's behind the name of the new album. Translated, it means if you want peace, prepare for war, yeah?
Yeah. I think, look, there's a lot of reasons why I picked it. It was picked just after lockdown was implemented here in Tennessee. So that was probably the very beginning of March, I think it was, if I remember correctly. But we'd already been so terrified into this human race erasing plague that we had pulled my daughter out of daycare and we were sort of all hunkering down. And then when it became basically, it was a legitimate lockdown. I did leave the house one time because it was necessary to go put some gas in or something. And it was this really ominous sense of post-apocalyptic, without all of the, that decay that you see after it's been a few decades of this. But there was nobody out there, man. All the stores were closed. There was no cars on the road. It almost felt like there were not even birds singing. There was just this really bizarre feeling. So that was an aspect of it that made me feel, this is kind of it needs to have a name that really represents the time we live in. And that there was also, if you remember, January, February was the start of some of the real civil unrest stuff. And then having written the lyrics just at the end of last year into maybe January, a lot of it was touching on that stuff and a lot of the societal stuff that I see, and also a lot of how I see social media affecting the kids of today, and certainly how I see social media can infect anybody and become quite an alluring toxin that you sort of you take it in and it feels good and you don't realize that it's actually going to destroy you. That's how I see it, and I think more and more it's just a place for vitriol and toxin and it never really feels like we live anymore in a time where if you even slightly deviate from what is considered the correct way to think or speak, then you are an ist, or you're an ism, or you are something that you've never even considered yourself remotely to be. So it feels like, to me, the whole part of all of it just felt like, man, there's a war on so many fronts going on. You can look at it any way you want. There's the war on politics, there's a war, there's a social war, there's for me the social media war, there's also the war on what I consider to be a freedom, that if you think that something as simple as you cannot walk down the street anymore without wearing a face covering. That's an interesting thing for me because, you know, and I think certainly in the very early days, we were told not to do that, you know, and then we were told to do it again. And then we're told, nah, no, don't do that. Now we're back to not to do it again, or you're killing grandparents. So it's just felt to me that all along we've been fed so much misinformation from all of these sides, and ultimately we don't really know what to. I feel like I don't know what the correct way to do is, what the correct thing to do or say is anymore. I used to live in a year ago. I felt pretty confident that I could say certain things, or I could at least hold certain beliefs and values, and it'd be okay. There would just be a sort of minor disagreement, and we can continue on our way. It now feels like if it's ramped up to the point where if you don't do as you are told, then the repercussions become quite aggressive. So all of that tied into me coming up with this name, and I think it for me certainly sums up this year. And I don't think that I could have found what for me would have been a more suitable name. I did think of other ideas. They obviously weren't good enough for me to even remember them, but it just felt like this perfectly encapsulates and encompasses everything that's going on around us. And I'm just grateful that I stumbled upon it, because I didn't come up with it myself. I happened to be online just sort of doing some research on I'm kind of a geek in the sense where I'll sit and, if I'm really bored, I'll try and figure out where idioms come from. Like why do we say, you know, the speech mannerisms that we have, which I know a lot of them come from Shakespeare, for example, right? So the things we'll say in current speech will still be Shakespearean. And I was on one of those hunts. I can't remember what I was looking for, but I was trying to hunt down what an idiom meant. One of the idioms that I just recently heard. And I wasn't very familiar with it. So, and that there's, you know, how the rabbit hole works is the internet becomes, oh, what's this? Boop. And what's this? And the next thing you know is you're like, why am I looking at these fluffy pink vibrators? I mean, how did we get here? You know what I mean? It's, but anyway, so I happened to sort of stick on a tangent that day, and I came across this website. There was a bunch of Latin sayings, and I was like, well, that's cool. Let me just see what some of them mean. And as I was going down, it just leapt out of me. I was like, oh man, this is perfect. So wow. It wasn't like I was some mastermind behind it, and I just sort of pulled it out of my vast knowledge of the Latin language, which I certainly don't have. But it just seemed to me again to be quite fitting of the current world we live in.
Shaun, kind of on that same kind of path and tangent, you talk about, you know, the unrest in America, the challenges that we're either told to believe to face today in the form of racism and everything else. And I can't help but ask you, you know, how you see today's political environment in parallel to your growing up in South Africa and apartheid.
Well, see, I was very young when that was still instituted in South Africa. By the time I turned 12, it was all abandoned. So really, you know, as a kid, you don't really care what's going on around you. You're not really privy to it. You really just live in the moment. You live in your backyard. You live in, ooh, let's go swimming. You live in what's for dinner. You don't ever think to really sort of, you don't really associate much of your life with society. You really associate it more with your sort of microcosm of your family and friends that are your schoolmates and stuff like that. So when I started high school, it was the first time they were integrated. And that's when I really started looking at the world beyond my backyard and sort of, you know, and then you start thinking about girls. So, you know, now you're starting to think of the world in a very different way. So now you're starting to notice different aspects. So for me, there was never really a big change. And I never grew up in that as far as I'm concerned. I was exposed to it as a very small child, but I didn't know that it was a thing. You know what I mean? I didn't realize what it was. So I also wouldn't have put those laws in place if I could have. So, you know, I can't be blamed for those things because I was not the one who put those institutions in their place. So anyway, so then growing up, it was a very different country, and it's, you know, it's just something that I was used to. But the interesting thing though is with the unrest, it's now everywhere. It's not just in the US. You know, you see it all across Europe, and you see even now in South Africa. Because here's the thing. The unrest is fine. I think if you're unhappy with something, you have absolutely every right to voice that unhappiness and to have your voice heard and to say something about it. But if you look at countries that went really, really crazy with the lockdowns, like South Africa said, you cannot leave your house for any reason whatsoever. They were arresting people for walking on the beach. There was nobody else on the beach, and that's happened here as well. I believe on a couple of occasions in California that I'm aware of. But then they went further. They said there's going to be no alcohol and no cigarettes. So you're taking away people's vices in a time when they need them more than anything else. And you're expecting everyone to say, yeah, cool, let's just do that for 6 months. And then it became, so what it did is it just sort of bred this underground black market of cigarettes and alcohol sales, which became very, very violent and very dangerous. So anyway, I believe in any of these situations that we're in, I think that we live in a country where we must always remember this, and I'm very proud to be an American citizen now, that you are in a country where you can say these things without fear of government retribution. Now, you cannot say that about many other countries at all. You cannot say about, I mean, in South Africa, at one point, there were people that disobeyed the lockdown, and they fired live ammunition at them, live rounds at these people because they were disobeying. Don't disobey us, the powerful. But there are things you can say and do here. In this great country that you couldn't say and do in, say, most of the third world countries, or even some of the Middle Eastern countries, because they don't allow for this kind of a level of freedom of speech. You look, for example, at the Iranian unrest, where they were actually murdering the citizens in the street because they were just protesting. And that, I don't know, I heard that UFC fighter was going to be executed. I don't know if he was eventually or not, because I tried not to really follow such a heinous story. I'm actually trying to step away from the news as much as possible these days, because it's just going to make you spiral. But that guy had done nothing but a peaceful protest, and he was going to be put to death for it. So I think that's what people should be mindful of in this country. And certainly that's how I see it. Actually, people can think whatever they want. I'm going to tell you what my opinion is, and it can always be taken or leaving, because I never want to come across as like some guy that's preaching in any way. But the way I see it is, I have more freedoms in this country than I had in my own growing up, the country that I grew up in. And all my life, it was my ambition to be here and be a musician and realize that dream. And America has given me that. And I love this country for it. No country is perfect. No system is perfect. And I think that if you see things that you would like to alter and things that you would like to change, I agree. I think you should be proactive about it. Where I draw a line is when innocent people start getting hurt for your proactive actions, let's say. So. Yeah. And we all know what that means. That means a protest is not a riot. A riot is a very different thing. That's when people get put in danger. Protest, I support wholeheartedly all day and all night. So but you see, even that opinion, if I was on Twitter, people would be all over my case because of me saying that. And there's nothing wrong with me saying that, because I'm pro peaceful protest. I'm anti-violent. And often, in some cases, the actions that result in the death of bystanders, or it gets so heated because you got the mob mentality. You know what I mean? So you got somebody gets riled up, everyone gets riled up, and this whirlwind and this mishmash of violence. And then who wins? What is achieved at the end of the day? There's nothing has been achieved. There's been no good outcome in any way. Nobody can walk away and say, "Oh yeah, I really achieved anything." You didn't do anything. All you did was you lowered your standard to something below what should be a polite society where communication is free and open and should be allowed to be that way. And if somebody that says something that you don't disagree with, you can either choose to argue the point that you have against them, or you can say, okay, fine, well, let's change the subject. This world we live in now, where friends are abandoning friends because of different political beliefs, is insane to me. Because it might be somebody that you've known for 20 years, and suddenly you don't like the way they're voting. Now you don't want to talk to them anymore. And you forget all those times you guys were barbecuing in the back and your kids were high-fiving and playing, I don't know, poker on a Friday night with cigar. How does that all get thrown away and cast aside? All because of differences in opinion, not even political, just differences in opinion.
Well, thank you for such a sane response to that.
I'm going to get so much flack for it, but I actually don't care, because I don't live in the social media universe. Yeah. So it's great. I don't have a Twitter, I don't have an Instagram. The band has all of those, and sure, people can say what they want, but I don't choose to be part of this yelling and screaming match. I like to be on the outside, and I look in, and I can see the effect of it, I think, a little bit more clearly, because when I was immersed in that stuff, when I did have a Twitter, I would take the bait. and it felt good because you could reach out and touch, and you could be like, yeah, I got to punch in. And that's that dopamine dump that you get, that feeling is really addictive.
Yeah.
And I realized very early on, I don't need any more things in my life that are addictive. You know what I mean? I was already doing more than enough cocaine at the time to kill a rhinoceros on a daily basis. I was heavily drinking, and I thought, well, man, I don't need another thing to get me all riled up and get me to have a reason to spar with anybody. So yeah, that's my whole view is, again, on all of these situations, as long as nobody innocent is being hurt in any shape or form, whether that's their property or their personal, them personally, I'm fine. I think it's good. I think that's what America was built on. You get to say what you think without repercussion. That's that's what you think. But again, there's also the danger of somebody not liking what you say. But then you have to be able to say, okay, cool. Well, then we can respectfully disagree. It doesn't have to end up being, let's go to fisticuffs over this. It just seems such an extreme response to a difference in thought, and I find it a little bit alarming, to be quite honest.
You talk about what you say, Shaun, aka Spanky McGee. Looking at an arc of your albums and the songwriting and the material you come up with over the years, the writing style has gone almost from like an angst-ridden to happy, goofy, optimistic with songs like Country Song and Fake It. However, subsequent albums, Isolate and Medicate, Poison the Parish, the new album, seem to me, from just a bystander, listener, fan perspective, to be quite a bit darker in nature. Do you think that's a correct assessment? And if so, what happened? What's behind that?
Yeah, I think that's really astute. Actually, what happened is the first album was very serious. Second album was kind of serious too, and honestly, a lot of the albums were still pretty serious. It was just the choice of singles that was different, because the label at the time gravitated towards the ones that were a little bit more quirky, let's say. So, like you say, Country Song and Fake It, for example, are very much more, even though they're on a more sort of, they're a happy delivery of what I consider to still be kind of a dark message, but it was, I also didn't want to ever be predictable. And that's the thing about, and I have a lot of respect for all the bands that have very long careers, but there's often a band that has a long career based on doing almost the same thing over and over again. And that's fine. And there are other bands that try something new, but they always come home to that comfortable foundation that they built with the fans and for what is, I guess, what is associated with their sound in particular. But what's happened is I came out of a lot of really bad sort of events in a row, and my way of dealing with those was to be the comedian, basically. You know how they always say that comedians, they try and entertain so that nobody can actually see how miserable they are. And that's kind of what it almost became, even in my personal life and everything. I was always trying to deflect, and I was trying to put out put on a brave face and sort of represent myself in a different way, knowing full well that underneath it all, there's this undercurrent that's very, very powerful. And what I've now done really is, the past 3 albums, like you say, I basically just said, well, also a lot of things changed in the sense of, I started paying a lot more attention to my life in general and things around me. I honestly, for the first few, let's say the first 10 years of touring, you live in that bus bubble and that RV bubble, and you live that life. You live that cliche, and you really abandon all of your mortality to just throw it to the wind and hope for the best. I mean, there's many times when I should probably not have come out the other side of one of those kinds of binges. But I'm really trying to, what music for me is at this point is the way to get the real darkness out of me. And it's very difficult to represent that in any way besides the way it is now. You know what I mean? It's very difficult to say, hey, I'm really pissed off, but hey, the song's catchy. It's kind of it's a nice way I like to play around with music. And I do certainly like to still present some things as sort of a sing-along happy sound, but really lyrically it's quite dark. But I've also found that I'm gravitating more towards that, just representing it as it should be, as far as I'm concerned. Not playing with it in the sense of trying to sort of put a bow on the top of it and shine it up and make it pretty. It's more about okay, no, this is really how I want to represent the music. And a lot of that as well is because I've produced the last two as well. So I've had a much bigger say in the way it sounds.
Yeah.
And I'm the one who dictates really the tones and where it's driving and how it needs to come across. Whereas when you have a producer at the helm, often that's taken away from you. And you have the right to say something at any given time. But if you're in the room with a guy who's been producing for, I don't know, 30 odd years and he's a legend, you often feel like, well, I'm just gonna let him take over then, right? Now I'll try and be as happy with the end product as possible. And I always felt like my input was not it wasn't required. It certainly wasn't requested. But I learned a lot from those guys, and I watched all the producers we worked with, and I think what I took at the end of it all is it's kind of the same concept as be the best version of your dad for your kid. You know what I mean? So take all the good things and be those, but then make that better for your kids. And that's kind of what I learned with the producers. I took all the good stuff from the producers and sort of threw out the bad stuff and took on the role of producer. And therefore I could really put the music out and present it as raw as I wanted it to be. And nobody could tell me, well, hang on, radio's not going to play that. Because I also wasn't really too concerned about that. And we also have an A&R department at the label that has never, ever fiddled with the music. They just said, hey, man, I know you're good. When you finish writing, just send me the music so we can check it out. We'll pick what's for the album and we're good to go. There's never been, the other thing was, for many years, I was told at Wind Up Records that I was a bad songwriter, that I couldn't write songs, that I needed to hire I'm not kidding. And it got to the point where I was so dejected that I almost just wrote junk songs, like funny songs to me, and then they became the singles, which is bizarre. Like, Same Damn Life, that dun, 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 that was a joke, man. And it was pushed into a single, and I was like, I wasn't happy with it. I didn't want that to be it, because I was really just writing the song out of frustration. So it came across as just like, that I love him, and where
the video was funny though. The video was very funny.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
awesome.
The video was really fun to make. Honestly, it was so great. In fact, one of those old gals hit on Dale because she didn't realize he wasn't 65. She it was so good. She's like, "So what are you doing when you get off?" He's like, "I'm good. This isn't real."
I would love to continue just shooting the shit with you here, but I'm afraid that Kyle over here is going to have a horse's head in my bed, because I know you've got some other interviews to. We can do like another 7 or 8 minutes if you guys are down. I'm good, man. Okay, all right, Kyle, you heard that. He's the man.
He's the boss. I can't. Hands are tied, I guess.
So Shaun, you talk. I mean, again, I'm going to go back to what you were just saying. You talk about those songs being a joke, but quite honestly, those are a refreshing break.
Right.
And I think probably why they were successful. And you talk about your current music getting the darkness out. What brings you the light? What's the happiest part of your life today?
I would say my girls, man. My wife and my kid are definitely they've been with. If I had to do this lockdown alone, I wouldn't be alive. I can say that without a doubt. And even though often, during months and months of being sequestered, you can still sort of miss each other and miscommunicate, and it's not always bunnies and roses over here. But it without them, it wouldn't have been possible, because it's just the feeling of being part of something that's bigger than myself, and really being able to father my daughter at a time when I'm ready to do it, and I'm available to do it because of the nature of the touring currently. So I was thrust into this position where, okay, so now it's going to be 12 hours a day, except for, while she's awake. This is now it's going to be dad time, and it's been great. It's been awesome. There was certainly some days, and when she was a little bit younger, when she still couldn't communicate very well, which was a little bit rough, because then she only communicates through screams and shouts.
Yeah.
But now that she can tell us what she needs and wants, it's great. And it's been this beautiful progression from watching a flower grow, really, and seeing the buds open. Because, sorry, I haven't done blow or anything. It's just that my studio, my AC has gone out, and of course it's like about 1,000,000 degrees in here. Yeah. But that's been really cool, and I think that, people have asked, so what have you learned, James? What new skill have you picked up? And I was like, well, honestly, I picked up how to be a dad that listens and really doesn't always because when you're touring, you come home for, so let's say you've been away for a week or 2 or 3 weeks, 4 weeks, sometimes months. You come home for a 2-week break and you feel like a stranger in your own home. So you almost sort of live on the outside of it, watching because that's now the house without you. And you don't really fit in right now because they've come up with new routines and things. So you then get back, you sort of hover on the outside, and you get back out into what you know. Then you come back and you sort of feel a little bit out of place again, and you get back, and and that's the thing I have felt, and a lot of the guys that I know feel the same way. And I don't think anyone ever really talks about it from our perspective. Is that the family has to hunker down without you, and they have to make do without you. So when you come home, you really are a guest.
Yeah.
In a sense, right? You're visiting the family because
you're that Disneyland dad for about a month and a half in between album cycles and tours. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to find your place, and it's quite difficult. And then you almost go, oh, thank God I have to get back on a bus. But what's been great this time is I don't have to do that. And there's been a lot of emotional turmoil about that as well, obviously, because that's what I do. But the silver lining has been to be able to become someone that listens more and really becomes more empathetic to the needs of my girls, because it's not just, it's quite easy to be bogged down in self-pity, which again, if I had been alone, the self-pity would have taken over, and who knows how I may have ended up. I guarantee it would have been some other kind of ridiculously stupid statistic, because I just didn't have the wherewithal to get through this alone. But yeah, that's been my rock and my foundation for me. And again, without them, this might not even have been a conversation,
Well, Spanky, I appreciate you for all your musical contributions to the world of rock over the span of the last decade plus, man. Everything that you've done in Seether has been spectacular. The dark moments, the light moments, and thank you for what you've been able to give to the world of music. Ladies and gentlemen, Spanky McGee, the lead singer from the Spanky and the McGees.
Thank you, Shaun. Appreciate you
guys.
guys.
I'm going to officially change my name now. The next time you see me, it's going to be Spanky for real.
All right, brother. Have a great
guys.
Your day, man. Take care.
Thank you. You too. Thanks, guys. I
You
appreciate it.
guys rock. Thank you.
Later.